Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
And we're in person today. Look at that. We're together. Yeah, together again. This is fantastic. And so it's so good to be coming to you from my office here, from our studio, where we are going to talk some sports. Welcome to the Sports on a Positive Tip podcast. So, Kenny, what's going on, man? You had a good trip here? You liking being back home or what?
Yeah, it's fun because I'm so used to doing like the MLB TV, but all the blackout restrictions. It's nice to actually listen to it on the radio. I know that sounds like I'm an old man, but it feels good to be back, even if it's for a couple days.
Well, awesome. Let's go around the horn for a little bit because we've got kind of to run the gamut here with some local teams and what's going on in sports. So let's start at the NBA. 5 in a row for the Knicks, man. You know, so what are we thinking here with the Knicks?
The Knicks is very interesting to me. First of all, 5 wins in a row is the first time they've done that since 2014.
It's a long time.
Time.
That's a long time.
And I'm really stuck on what Thibodeau said a couple days ago, as a couple of people, namely Mark Cuban and Luka Doncic, were talking about the play-in tournament and how they don't really like it. Thibodeau's like, I like it, I'm in. But right now, the Knicks would actually be in the 6th seed, so they wouldn't even have to worry about it, which to me would be amazing. Right.
Who would have thought the Knicks would be 3 games over 500 at this late? You know, that's 57 games in. They're playing 72, right, this year?
Yeah.
So you only have 15 games left, and they're 3 games over 500. Can we say anything more about the job that Thibodeau has done with this team?
I don't think so. Because I look at Julius Randle has taken such a huge step forward, but also that defense. 3rd ranked overall in defensive rating, top team in opponents' points per game allowed, top 5 team in opponents' field goal percentage allowed. This team seems to be very good defensively. You give them a few more years where they can kind of figure out how to win some of these tight games that they've lost to teams like Philly, Milwaukee, Brooklyn.
The Nets,
This is going to be a dangerous team. Right now, they probably face, hopefully, I would love for them to face the Celtics in the first round. I feel like that's a team they can actually beat. But even if they face Milwaukee or they face Philly, even if they get swept in the playoffs, the fact that they made the playoffs, huge testament to Thibodeau and his staff.
It really is. And we'll talk about culture because I think that Thibodeau has really changed the culture here, as has the new GM, as has, the staff that he's brought on. But we can't talk about the Knicks without talking about just the incredible job that Julius Randle has done.
Yeah.
Just absolutely amazing. We were able to watch the game last night together. And did you catch where they were talking about how once the Knicks weren't invited to the bubble, how that's when Julius Randle went to work and he trimmed his body, worked on his shot, and it's so paid off for him. I mean, last year we were like, Julius Randle, but this year he's lights out. 44 points last night. He's gotten a couple of triple doubles this year. I mean, what do you think about Julius Randle?
Last year, this time, I was like, okay, so what can we get for him in the trade market? Honestly, I looked at him. It was like a horrible consolation prize for not getting Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and Zion for that matter. But I think he's done an amazing job. I really love how he's kind of taken that role of being the leader. And a lot of that work hard mentality, I think, is awesome that came from Kobe in his first year. So I look at Julius Randle, and last year I was like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens in his 3rd year and get rid of him. But I think now he's one of those guys that you can build around. You got him, you got R.J. Barrett.
Oh, Barrett has done phenomenal. Yeah. Elfrid Payton, I think, has done phenomenal. And Derrick Rose has been, and I wasn't crazy about getting Derrick Rose. I'll be the first to say that because of the past, but he's obviously passed his past, which is great to see. And he's just played lights out when he comes in. He's just that spark off the bench. But Randle, it's almost like he's fulfilling it now. And it just goes to show, God, how God has us is on His timetable. You know, we sometimes say we want to be great right away at something, and you know, we jump right in and we don't get results right away. But God knows what the timetable is. Julius Randle was a dominant college player that had, quite frankly, with the Lakers and with New Orleans, had been a disappointment in the NBA. Was just okay. And here he is now in, I think, year 7 or year 8. I think it's the 7th year in the NBA. He's just really fulfilling everything. And that's God's timing, right? It's like they've got him in the right place, right time, and he's just doing unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I feel like sometimes people need the right people around them to thrive.
Yeah.
Because he was 2nd overall, right? Do I have that right? Or
yeah,
he was.
I think
he was
so.
up there.
He was up there.
And like he was always one of those guys like, oh well, he's never really reached that potential.
Mm-hmm.
Jabari Parker was also in that draft, if I remember.
And you know, he's been hurt a lot, but he certainly hasn't reached that potential. Wasn't Andrew Wiggins, I think, also in that draft? And so you've got some guys that didn't really pan out, at least just yet. You know, who knows when? You know, but with Randall, this is his year. This is where he grows up. I'm excited. I mean, I'd love to say I would be going back to the Garden. There's nothing like watching a basketball game at the Garden, but I'm probably not, you know, until probably next year, even though they're allowing, you know, some fans in. I think about 2,000 a night are coming in, but I can't wait till that Garden is packed and there's nothing like the fans at Madison Square Garden when they get into a game. It's, you and I have been there. It's the loudest place that you can be. And so, any other teams really surprising you in the NBA right now? You know, in the West, obviously, the Lakers a little shaky because of the injuries. Phoenix and Utah still on top. You know, any other big surprising teams? I saw where the Hawks are like 6 games over 500 as well. So, you know, they're getting some good coaching, I think, as well, and their players are maturing at the same time. Anything else in the NBA surprising you these days?
I think part of it is how under the radar, not so much with one of the teams I'll mention, but how under the radar the Bucks and the Clippers have been this year. The Clippers not as much. Like, I feel like especially recently they've gotten a little bit more love, but like the Bucks could be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. I think also, to me, what's been very interesting is they were worried that the Lakers would drop very far, but it seems like a lot of these other teams that kind of could take their spot haven't. One of them would probably be Dallas.
Yeah.
I would say Dallas probably ranks as one of the most disappointing teams this year.
I
would say Phoenix, also just because Chris Paul has been so good, and I think he doesn't get the love he deserves.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable. I don't know why he's not in the MVP talk. But let's go back to Dallas for 1 second. That's an odd team, and I didn't see it last year, but I think Luka Doncic is phenomenal talent. Every single call, that's not going to serve him well. He's with the refs. He's chirping at some of the Knicks last night. He almost got into it with Reggie Bullock. Somebody needs to pull him to the side and tell him, listen, just pull out the films of Dirk Nowitzki, man, for all those years. You need to be better and above all that. You know, LeBron James, you don't see him every call just chirping at the referees. And I'm specifically saying all-time greats. I think Nowitzki is one of the all-time greats. Obviously, LeBron is. I think Doncic has the potential to be up there, but man, he's got to keep his composure, don't you think? I mean, and that wasn't the first time. You know, he got into it with Montrezl Harrell, right? Montrezl Harrell, right?
Yeah.
With the Clippers last year, and you know, even in the playoffs, he was losing his composure. So
yeah,
I
would agree because, like, especially. I remember there was one where he was like kind of flirting with one of the female refs.
Yeah, I mean, but he doesn't seem, you know, it seems like coaches were like going to him on the sidelines every few seconds last night, like he needs a lot of attention, and it seems like he wasn't listening to them. He'd still go back out and yell back at the referees, but you know, hopefully that'll work itself out because I think he's a phenomenal player. So, I think I agree with you on Dallas. I'm just excited about the Knicks. I think that this is going to be another pivotal week if they continue to play well like this, and if they can cement themselves in that 5-6 hole. Avoid the play-in, which I think is after you explained it to me. I think that's going to be really exciting for the NBA. So let's jump over to baseball for just a bit. Listen, I know the Yankees, but as we were just talking about, the Yankees just lost today, and they're 5-9. It's 5-9. This is a full season. It's not a 60-game season this year. I wouldn't panic, if I'm a Yankee fan. Although, let me ask you this: are you surprised at the amount of booing, and already even in the Daily News app how they're killing the Yankees for this really slow start? This is not like 1970, 1978 or 1984, and George Steinbrenner is just going to fire the hitting coach or somebody like that. Or unfortunately, he fired Yogi Berra. I remember only 8 games in 1 year. What are your thoughts on the Yankees? And I know you're not panicked.
Yeah, I'm not panicked because I think it is a long season. I think where a lot of it comes from is there was a lot of hype coming into this team. Because like the last couple years, the question has been, can this team stay healthy? So far, the only guys that have really gotten hurt, are Luke Voit and Zach Britton. Everyone else has stayed fairly healthy. And still, this team looks very sluggish offensively. Giancarlo Stanton, DH, was supposed to kind of help him focus on being a great hitter. Hasn't seemed to work out. Gleyber Torres has struggled. Really, like the whole lineup. I've seen signs of life from DJ LeMahieu the last week or so, but I think just because of the high expectations, Yankee fans are like, come on. And also with the Rays have kind of replaced the Red Sox, I think, is that rivalry with like all the chirping and the booing, and then just like getting killed, like losing 2 out of 3 last weekend, already lost the first 2 games this week, and then also losing to them in the division series last year. It's just hard as, I think, a Yankee fan to see that. But also, there's going to be times where the rotation will kind of get it together. It's still early to cast judgment on Kluber. Tyone's looked okay. I think Montgomery's been really good. Obviously, Cole's been great. I think they have to figure out what they're going to do with that 5th spot, whether that's going to be Herman back there, Davy Garcia. I would give it to Michael King because he's kind of, to me, shown the most promise. The bullpen has been fantastic. But really, like, guys like Aaron Hicks, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, they'll get their hits. Stanton, if he's healthy, he's going to put up 30 home runs. Same with Judge.
Yeah.
Hicks will get his stuff together. I'm not that worried about the hitting. It's just, I think to me, it's just a very boring game to watch. Like, it doesn't seem like there was much intrigue. The bats kind of just have seemed dead.
Yeah, they're not getting the clutch hits. They're getting a few guys on base, it seems like, but not driving them home. Are you long-term throughout the year, do you think Tampa is going to play like this? They're playing very, very well right now.
I don't think so. They started out the season really bad, and then, of course, they faced the Yankees.
They're winning almost every game against the Yankees.
So I think they have 7 games on the year, and 4 of them are against the Yankees.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Like,
okay.
I don't think they'll play that well because, like, their rotation is worse off than the Yankees, and then also they have a lot of guys hurt.
Yeah.
So I guess we shall see. But
what about the Red Sox? Are you surprised at what they're doing? And we could talk about leadership a little bit here, right? So are you surprised at what the Red Sox are doing?
Honestly, yeah, because like last year losing Mookie Betts was obviously big. But then also, I didn't understand the moves that they've made, whether it's like trading Benintendi, who like to me is like...
He's a very good player, I thought.
Yeah. And like I feel like
young still, it's not like they were saving a lot of salary with him. I was surprised at that one too,
bringing back Jackie Bradley Jr. or not bringing him back to me was
very
also
solid
odd.
Player for years, winning ball player.
Yeah. But, I mean, Alex Cora must be a good manager. And it's hard because, like, I don't know how much of that is cheating or not. But, like, I'd have to assume at this point, he wouldn't be dumb enough to cheat a 3rd time.
No. I too many eyes on him. And I think that Cora probably really just got caught up in everything, as did Beltran, as did even A.J. Hinch. A.J. Hinch was the manager, should have put his foot down. But Cora obviously did a great job with the Red Sox before. And we like to talk about 2nd and 3rd chances because God gives us that. And so I'm glad he got another chance. But I just think that he has something that is of leadership quality that really sparks, that inspires other players. Because if you look up and down that lineup, there's no way they should be playing the way they are. And who knows if they'll sustain it. But I think they'll be good most of the year because of Alex Cora. I think he's a difference maker. I really do.
Yeah.
Shane. It's a shame what he did, because that's gonna, unless he wins legitimately another championship, that's gonna stain his legacy probably forever. But I think that it took away from the fact that this guy's a good leader and a good manager. And when he was a good leader when he was a player, he was never a guy that hit probably more than 260 or something like that. But yet, he was the guy that all other players looked up to when he was playing.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Yankees are going to be fine. The Mets can't seem to play a game, playing a doubleheader tonight. But I think the Yankees are going to be fine. I don't think there's any reason to panic. It's so early. I'm now declaring this. I've declared it for years, but I hate booing. I hate when it's one thing to boo the opponents, but when you boo your home team, I just hate that. Listen, fans, you have a right to do that, right? You go to the game, you're paying your money, and these days it's a lot of money that you pay. But I can't boo my home team. I just can't. I can get on them, but I can't boo my home team. Let's get into two other topics. And let's stay with culture for a second and jump to the Mets, since we're talking about baseball. And then we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson. But we'll be brief on the Mets. I'm really disappointed at some of the things that are coming out with the Mets. And, we knew for several years that the Mets culture was kind of off. The Wilpons. And I wasn't in the camp that, hey, let's get him out of here. We'll be instantly good right away. Listen, because the Wilpons did spend money. There was a time when we signed Carlos Beltran, we traded for Carlos Delgado, we signed Pedro Martinez.
Jason Bay,
thank you.
The goat of Mets.
Thanks for reminding me of him. But we signed Johan Santana to a huge, contract. Cespedes just a couple of years ago, we gave him $27 million a year. So I don't think they've been cheap. Now, have they made the right moves? Not all the time. Jason Bay is one that you said, you came up with. But, but there probably was something underlining in the culture. I was always surprised, like going from Terry Collins to Mickey Callaway surprised me, right? And this is, none of us knew. We didn't, the fans, we didn't know about Callaway, right? But I just was like, really? I mean, he's going from pitching coach of the Indians. They won, I get it. And Terry Collins had such a good long track record with the Mets. I thought they should have gotten. There were a couple of veteran managers that were available at that time that I thought they could have went after, like Ron Gardenhire, somebody like that who had Mets ties because he played for the Mets in his playing career. But, so some of the stuff, here's the thing that's happened, just for folks that maybe haven't read it. What they're finding through this whole investigation of Jared Porter, now David Newman, Mickey Callaway, is that the Mets, particularly, and it's hard for me to say this because I like Sandy Alderson, but particularly Sandy Alderson, they kind of turned a blind eye to some of the things that was going on when it came to sexual harassment and inappropriate comments within the organization. And I think what's bothering me is with Alderson, and he almost is like talking like this is like the 80s. Where it's like, okay, I'm going to tell him to cut it out. And he's, this tells me that he doesn't think he's wrong at all, because he's saying this not only to investigators, but he's saying it to reporters. That, I told him to cut it out. I still hired him. He has zero regrets on any of that. He hasn't once said, like he said, when I hired Jared Porter, we didn't check with anybody, with any females. With Callaway was probably much worse because he had a long reputation when he was in Cleveland of that type of behavior. And there's no way this didn't get back to Callaway, because Callaway's a guy that's been around a long time in baseball, that I'm sure knows a ton of people. He probably knows everybody. He knows people in every organization, I'm sure. But I don't think I've really legitimately felt like he didn't think none of this is a big deal. Like, it's almost like boys will be boys. And it's 2021, and we're just at a different, era in our nation's history where we shouldn't tolerate stuff. I can remember things that were said in the workplace in the 80s that quickly became bad in the 90s that we fired people for, in the 90s. And so this is not really anything new. It's gotten just more attention to it. But I don't, and I hate to say this because we're on a positive tip, right? But I just don't, I hope I'm wrong here, but I don't know that Alderson is going to last much longer in the position, because at some point, after the new owner reads all this, he's going to start to get some pressure, or he's just going to feel convicted himself and say, wait a second. And I'm going to feel bad about that because he personally went out and brought Alderson, back out of retirement. And I'm trying to be fair because I also know there was a time period, maybe almost 2 years, that Alderson really battled cancer. He was very sick. He tried to work still while he was sick, and he still did, I thought, an overall really good job with the Mets. But he has a long track record. Great job with the Oakland A's building that team in the 80s and 90s, and then he worked in the commissioner's office for a long time. Some of the stuff you're seeing today, like the interleague play and stuff like that, he was a big part of a lot of that, with Bud Selig. So I just it's a culture that needs to be fixed, and I'm not sure that he's the guy to fix it, and I just don't want it to affect the players, and I'm sure they're talking about, and I'm sure there's a lot of players that really love Sandy Alderson on the Mets, but I can't believe how tone deaf he seems to be on this, how it's like, he's in a time warp and he's stuck back in the 80s. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's one thing, because I feel like especially with general managers or people that are like that, it's very hard for them to admit when they're wrong. I've heard this before spoken of, other sportscasters say it. For example, the Arizona Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen with their first pick a few years ago.
Yeah.
The next year, they realized this was a mistake. Kyler Murray's available. Let's take him. Guy only had, 12 starts and then is gone, and really hasn't played in the NFL since.
Right.
The GM was like, yeah, I messed that up. Let me fix it. A lot of times, GMs don't want to actually admit when they're wrong. Whether that's with a trade, whether that's with a free agency signing that was really bad. We won't point to any fingers there. But I think also here has a very hard time of saying, well, I allowed this to happen. But I think when you start looking at it, who hired Mickey Callaway? Who hired all of these guys? Because, that wasn't Steve Cohen. That wasn't any other guys. Sandy Alderson is kind of the common denominator here. And I think when you're perpetuating that type of culture, it's not going to look good. Baseball has made great strides when it comes to having women in sports.
We have a female GM down in Florida. We have Jessica Mendoza is still calling games for ESPN, and there's one or two other female announcers. Obviously, Susan Waldman, right here in New York, has been a trailblazer.
National anthem singer, too.
Yeah. I don't understand why he would not say, I've been wrong through this time, and here's what we're going to do going forward. That would probably save his job right now and save some face. Because all of us will make mistakes and bad hires, right? That can happen. But there's a pattern when stuff is brought to him. And I'm just surprised that he wouldn't say, listen, we warned him, and after we warned him, it was very serious. We didn't think it rose to us letting him go. We warned him, and, it stopped after we warned him, for this guy David Newman. Instead, he says, yeah, we just told him to cut it out.
Well, to me also, why not just say, I'm surprised he gave such a flippant answer and not we're still learning more about the situation, we're still investigating it, we're trying to figure it out and make our next move. That's what most people say. But I don't know.
Yeah, but I also respect his honesty.
Yeah.
But he's just raw. That's just how he is. He's not... But in that sense, he hasn't changed because he got away a little bit from the metrics thing that he was so stuck on with Billy Ball and everything like that for a while when he first came to the Mets. When he got Cespedes, he got away from that. But Cespedes didn't have any good on-base percentage. Cespedes came to hit home runs, and that's when he did it. So and I don't know. I think that he needs sensitivity training. I don't think that he'll take it. You know what I mean? But I think that if he doesn't, if he doesn't backtrack here, he's probably going to be out of a job. But then will the Mets culture change in that front office? It's an embarrassment right now. It really is. And the Mets happen to be playing well in the last, when they can't play. They've been playing actually much better than they were. They're getting great pitching. And that's what you'd like to talk about. Instead, you've got this. Well, let's switch over. Now, this is a tough topic, right? And we touched on this a little bit last week, Deshaun Watson, and there was a pretty in-depth article. It sounds like, and we knew this was going to happen, right? That there'll be reporters, that there's some great reporting these days from The Athletic and places like that go really deep, that really, and to me, reading some of these articles, they seem to be pretty well balanced, right? They don't seem to have a stake in, hey, we're out to get Deshaun Watson or any of these articles, like the one with Sandy Alderson. It was just, they just repeated what Sandy Alderson said. They didn't really put their opinion too much in there. And so there was an article in ESPN probably middle of this week that really went deep with Deshaun Watson. And you texted me like, hey, now I don't know. So what are you thinking about Deshaun Watson right now? Because as we predicted, that's going to become a huge, huge story. And it's a shame that that's what we're going to be talking about going into the draft and, into training camp and stuff like that. It's going to be talking about him. What was your feelings after you read that story?
Well, kind of going back on the idea of it being a big story, like, imagine this aside, going into the draft in a couple weeks, him still on the market. You have teams like San Francisco that would easily trade the third pick and others for him. You have probably maybe Miami. But either way, I think, like you said, it was a very balanced article. I thought it was very interesting that there's, it seems like there's Deshaun Watson good person and Deshaun Watson bad person. There's several massage therapists that they interviewed and talked to and said every single time Deshaun was an absolute gentleman. I never thought that there was anything wrong. But then there was others that say he would turn a certain way so that I would see him naked and kind of force me to do things. And then to me, one of the more interesting things was, and I would also have to sign a disclosure agreement. Which, first of all, if you signed it and then are saying something, you're violating it. But, I wonder what the other part of that is. So, is it hush money? What exactly is going on? And then also, to me, what was kind of interesting is that someone was saying, I don't know if it was a trainer or whoever, had said that there's a lot of people that, when it comes to athletes and, having particular trainers or massage therapists, they usually only have a couple they can trust. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of people. Most people don't go to whoever to get their hair cut.
Right.
Most people, they have a specific place or a specific person that does it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious as to what's going on here. Is Deshaun Watson just hitting up random massage therapists, amateur massage therapists on Instagram and really just using it as a tool for sex?
The article indicated that. I mean, he's getting massages every day almost. So the article kind of indicated that, he's just, going into Instagram and just, whatever cities he's going to be in is where he just chooses something,
Yeah. And also, and I'm not saying I don't believe any of these women, because I do. I think, their voice needs to be heard. But I wonder if, they read it wrong. But also, I think you would tell the difference, too. So, that's where I'm
yeah,
I don't know.
I would think so. I think, though, the thing that bothered me, because I felt like that article was very well balanced, right? Because, again, there's several that say he's never been a problem. But there's a lot that are saying, yeah, and it ranged, right? It ranged from just inappropriate. It ranged from, hey, the way he moved. It ranged from he got aroused, but nothing else happened, to, oh my gosh, he forced me to do something,
Yeah.
But I think what bothered me more was a day or two before that article came out was his lawyer who's a great lawyer, who's had big clients, Roger Clemens being one, Andy Pettit, but he came out and said how there's been some consensual stuff.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, like, so is that just his thing? I don't know. I mean, who knows? But now the police are involved as well, and probably a lot of the things that some of these great reporters now have unearthed, the police are going to do that and more. And if he falls to one person, he's going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that in some cases there's probably evidence, that I'm sure there's no cameras and stuff like that. I hope that doesn't come out, that there's, some footage like there was of Bob Kraft, which never came out. They suppressed it. He got good lawyers to really suppress that. So, I mean, you never know. Somebody could leak something these days. But I would say maybe there's some physical evidence that something inappropriate happened. I guess here's the other thing, because and this really bothers me, because the article also, it doesn't bother me that the article put it in there. I thought it was fair. But the article really put in there what a good guy he's been, how he randomly has, paid people's college tuition, has, fed families,
Hurricane relief.
And that's kind of the Deshaun Watson public persona that we've seen. And a Christian, goes to church, and it just seems to me that there's something else there, and that to me is a shame, because whenever you have struggles, where should you go, right? You can turn to the Lord, right? That's number one, but then you can also get help. If you're getting massages every day, some sort of, I mean, come on. Now listen, if you're just getting a massage because you need your muscles and everything like that, and I've never lived the life of an NFL player and the torture they put their body through, so I get that, and I'm sure there's players that just legitimately get massages often.
Yeah.
There's just too many people that said that there was other stuff,
Yeah.
and that's disturbing.
Yeah, and that's the thing with me too, like, it'd be very different if it was like one or two people saying like he did something, and then like 25 women saying like no. It seems like it's kind of more the opposite.
Yeah.
And like kind of to what you were saying, the idea of what you're doing in private, like if you're doing sins in private, like your sins will find themselves out. You look at like a lot of the people, like a lot of like the shocking things that came out. Like I remember like when Tiger Woods got into his first accident because he was coming out of some gal's house or something like that. Like it may not be as publicly known as that, but like even if no one ever actually sees those things, like God saw all of what Deshaun Watson does, regardless of whether he gets convicted of it or not, whether there's like hard evidence on it or not. There probably will be hard evidence. Like I remember that the article alluded to like a few text messages. A subpoena will take care of that. Nice and quick. So I think just in general, like that idea that like it is kind of shocking that like out of all the people you would not have thought Deshaun Watson.
No, not at all.
I think it also goes to show you like truly narrow is the way of the kingdom of God. Like it seems like there's a lot of people that we think will make it there, but then end up not making it there. I mean, we talk about that with sports in general. Like, think about every time someone makes a Super Bowl prediction. Most of the time, you're lucky to get one right, not both of them at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. I think that was well said. We all sin every day, and so we're not judging Deshaun Watson, and but here's the thing that God's very clear on, right? When your sin starts to really impact other people, it's now you're at a little bit of a different level. And that article was pretty clear. There were about, I think, 5 or 6 that have stopped working because they're traumatized, and that's their business. I would imagine a really good massage therapist probably makes a decent living, right? Especially if you're doing it for, athletes and, folks that are making a lot of money. You probably could theoretically charge a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
But you probably work really hard to get your business going. You work hard at that craft, and now you don't want to work anymore because you're traumatized because, somebody did this to you. That's where, to me, it goes to another level. And, it just, it stinks. It really does. Because, this was a guy that, I wanted to really like over the years. I thought he would, be for the next, 10, 15 years one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. That still might happen. We don't know, what's going to come out. And, but this is a big, big step backwards for him, I think. So, let's hope it gets all sorted out, and that the Lord is in that in any way that He sees fit, obviously.
Yeah, and hopefully the NFL will do the right thing, because you look at the whole Ray Rice situation and others, I feel like they haven't handled it great. I think they need to be very appropriate in the type of punishment that's handed out. If they actually have hardcore evidence that something big happened, you can't say, oh well, we'll just kind of suspend him a few days. Tom Brady got 4 games for Deflategate, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of layers to that. But, if he actually, sexually harassed women, he needs a very lengthy suspension. If not, suspension indefinitely, and we'll decide when he comes back.
Yeah, Roger could tell once word got out for that and got to him, he's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Not again. Not again, All right. Well, we got more to talk about next week. You're going to be heading back to Cleveland, so we'll be back virtual next week. But this has been fun, right? This has been fun. Absolutely. To be in person for a change. So let's get the music to end us here on the podcast. And so why don't you take us home?
All right. This is Kenny Squared N.
Kenny.
Here we go. In-person sports with the positive tip. We will see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching.